right, and welcome back to the Canadian Rock. This is Jamie coming to you from Rothesay, New Brunswick. Hopefully you enjoy the show today. It's going to be a wild ride. We got a great guest coming on today. We've got Nadia Popov. We'll be getting to her shortly, but just those selfless plugs that we need to do every week to make sure, or every pod, to make sure that we're spreading the word of rugby out, in particular Canadian rugby, and some great thoughts and great athletes we've been on here. So if you want to contact us, we're all over social media on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Twitter, we're at Canadian Ruck. Instagram, _Canadian_Ruck. Facebook at the Canadian Ruck. And our email is thecanadianruck@gmail.com. The big thing is, though, is when you're watching and listening, make sure you're following, subscribing, and sharing. Most platforms all have a share button. They all have a share button. Just send it off on your social media feed, or text it to one of your mates, or email it to somebody, send it to your folks, whatever. Just keep getting the word out, because we've had a lot of great athletes. 32, 33. Nadia's our 33rd pod. A lot of great Canadian content on here, and it's great for those words to be listened to. I know as Canadians, typically we're humble, and I think that's one of the most amazing attributes we can have as Canadians. But at the same time, we also need to recognize some of these great athletes. And I think in part that's what the Canadian Ruck is allowing to happen, is we get a chance to chat rugby with some fine caliber athletes and even finer people. So make sure you're getting that news out, getting that word out, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, or Castbox. And as always, if you're unsure where to go, just jump on the website, the Canadian Ruck. .weebly.com. It's got that Weebly in there because it's a free hosting site if you leave the Weebly in, and I left the Weebly in. So take that as you will. Shout out of the week. Not really a shout out, but just kind of I guess, flashback to last pod. We had a bit of a poll online on Twitter and on Instagram. And the gray area of the week, or the pod, was to find out who you feel should be Canadians that would represent Rugby World Cup All-Stars versus South Africa, if such a match were to take place. I think it'd be a really cool endeavor, like whether it's a tour, whether it's a match. But who would you vote for? And the fans voted, and I tallied it up between Instagram and Twitter, and the votes were for either Tyler Ardron or Cole Keith for the forwards. And congrats, Tyler! You garnered more votes than Cole. It wasn't too far off, but it was a good mix. And for the backs, it was between DTH Van der Merwe and Jeff Hassler, and DTH came through as the nomination for the back. So I don't think you could have gone wrong with any of those four lads to represent Canada if there were an all-star game. But most of you spoke, and those that have chosen Tyler and DTH. So congrats to those guys. It's nice to hear fans voting and liking you and liking all those guys. This week we're going to look a little bit differently with a combination of rugby news / the gray area. I've kind of got them amalgamated together, And the reason being is because it covers a few different things, kind of titled under inclusivity. And, I've had a few people reach out to me after I had Doug Fraser on and talking about how inclusive rugby is, but beyond just the Black Lives Matter movement, regarding a whole plethora of different reasons why rugby is an inclusive sport. And I've always known this. I read and I watch, and I've known this myself, but I did a little more digging to it just to check out, I guess, to get some better information. And we start with the inclusivity of the physicalness of the sport. I've seen videos in South America. There's programs in the UK and in New Zealand for players with Down syndrome, which is, it's amazing having kids and having adults with Down syndrome learning and playing rugby. Personally, I've coached. I know of one student who has high functioning Asperger's, that played high school rugby with us and won a AAA championship with us. All sizes and colors are welcome in rugby. Might not have always seemed that way, but I mean, if you look at how South Africa fared during the apartheid years and how far they've come, and it's amazing now to look at the different sizes, the different colors, the personality teams have today. Basically back in the 80s and 90s, it was said that if you you're a big fella, you could play. If you're a small fella, you could play. Rugby has a position for all shapes and sizes of athletes. But it goes beyond that. And one of the areas that Nadia is going to talk to us about today is mental health, as she's a mental health advocate, and we'll get to that in a bit. But it is a huge part of the conversation, rugby and mental health. And what we've been finding in the rugby community is that players have been more willing to speak up about their mental health and to bring light to mental health issues. And I think that's great. I'm a mental health advocate at my school. We take part in, Bill Let's Talk Day, and we have lots of other initiatives that happen throughout the year. It's something that over the years it's kind of come to the forefront where, maybe in the 70s or 80s or 90s or even the 2000s, that it wasn't something you spoke about. It wasn't real, but it is real. And more are talking about their mental health issues. Let's go back just to the 2019 World Cup, Rugby World Cup. Liam Squire was supposed to be a starting flanker for the All Blacks, and he stepped aside and he said, meaning mental health, is more important than rugby. And he needed that break from the game to make sure that his head was on right. Another famous rugby player, AJ Venter, who played for the Springboks, he's retired now, but he's a huge advocate for mental health in South Africa. He suffered from anxiety, he suffered from depression, and he also had a nervous breakdown. He had an interesting quote. He said, "I don't want that tough time over again, but I look back at it now with absolute gratitude, purely because in times of hardship, that is when we grow as humans. When everything is hunky-dory, we tend to stagnate. But when we are really under pressure and stress, we dig deep and show that we are resilient. I came out the other side as a much better man, and everything improved in my life." That's great advice from AJ Venter, great words. Everybody struggles with mental health issues. Maybe someday we'll get into talking more personally about it, but there's some issues right there, and some great thoughts from Liam Squire and AJ Venter. So that was great, hearing those thoughts from Liam Squire and AJ Venter, a couple athletes at the top of their game, talking about their struggles. But it hits more places than just the elite athletes. It also hits in high school athletes, or those the guys and girls that play pickup on the weekend and things like that. Saying that my wife is kind of a genius. I think so. I know I'm biased, but I think so. She works with child and youth at risk and does counseling services and things like that. And she told me a story about a father she had met, and their young fella was struggling with life and figuring out his path, and dad was trying to, basically stay harp on him, try and get him to go to counseling or psychiatrist, and the kid just shuts it down just immediately. Just nope, just shut it down. Doesn't want to deal with it. I'm not sick. I'm not crazy, is what he says. So my wife said, maybe it's a matter of just kind of flipping the script, talking to your son differently. She suggested, and I think this is great, and it kind of ties in nicely with a podcast about rugby, about sports. She said, your son was athletic. He plays a lot of sports. And he said, yeah. And she said, well, what does a coach do? Well, a coach teaches skills. A coach teaches team play. A coach teaches life lessons, things like that. With rugby, the coach teaches them how to hold and pass the ball properly, how to catch properly, how to ruck, how to tackle, etc. She said, well, next time you bring it up, talk to your son like a counselor. The psychiatrist is a coach. And instead of teaching you how to catch a ball, they're teaching you how to deal with life struggles. Instead of teaching you how to ruck, they're teaching you how to deal with setbacks. Instead of teaching you how to tackle, they're teaching you how to become resilient. Whether, your kid has anxiety or depression or OCD, a counselor, a psychiatrist is a coach to give you life lessons and tools to help you become a better person, much like a coach is trying to help you become a better player. So I thought that was really a genius way to look at it, and a way for me personally to help with my athletes that I coach at the high school level and rugby and things like that, to help me understand them better and to help me as a coach be a better coach and a better person and a better leader and a better um, person who develops life skills as opposed to just rugby skills. And that's very important to me as a coach. It's not just about what happens on the pitch, it's what happens in their life and what they're doing with their lives. So have that sense as to how to address students when they're struggling, or some of my friends that might be struggling. It's a neat way to look at it. And I think when you think of mental illness or mental health issues, um, a lot of people will say, well, somebody's got a broken arm, they're in a cast, you can see that they're injured. With mental health, you don't necessarily see it. It's not always the case. A good friend of mine suffers from depression, and he told me a story a couple of years ago where his kids were constantly asking mommy, why is daddy always sad? And he eventually told his kids what was going on. There's something in his brain that doesn't make him as happy as he wants to be all the time, and he has to take a pill to help. But it's getting better, and it's not the kid's fault, it's not my wife's fault, it's just something in my head that just doesn't click properly. So his kids could pick up on it. So those often are the cases. It may be hidden to the outside world, but those closest to and those are often the most important people in your life. So when they can see it, if they can understand something's going on, you owe it to yourself and to those that are closest to you to see that life coach, to see that counselor, to try and make yourself better so that it's better for you and better for everyone else. Um, yeah, so it was a great little piece of advice. Hopefully you take something out of that, maybe use it moving forward with some of your athletes or yourself, and that would be great. From there, though, we're gonna look at sexuality in rugby, and it's pretty neat. I did a little digging. I'd known about a few of these things, and then I actually came across a top 10 basically of inspiring gay rugby players and personalities. And we're gonna go through that as well. But my understanding, Gareth Thomas from Wales, over 100 caps with Wales, was the first or one of the first rugby players to come out as gay. I believe he came out shortly after he retired, but he had over 100 caps with Wales. He was on Lions tour, did Barbarians tour, so he wasn't a bit player. He was one of the dominating players of his era. All right, and then we have another personality, and that would be Nigel Owens. Nigel's my favorite ref, hands down, arguably the best ref in the world, if not, he's top three. He came out in 2007 as being gay, and he's also an advocate for inclusivity in the sport. And if you haven't read his autobiography, you should. He talks about his attempted suicide when he was 11 years old from being bullied, to coming out, as a gay man, as a professional rugby referee, and the struggles he went through. You get a chance, Google Nigel Owens on YouTube, or and listen to how he interacts with the players. It's amazing. And then this one really um, enthralled me when I watched this. So a couple months back, I don't even know it was that long, I was watching TSN, and ESPN hosted this 10-minute short documentary on Mark Bingham. And if you haven't heard of Mark Bingham, you need to look him up. He's a former rugby player, gay rights advocate for those playing rugby. And since 2002, every other year, there's been what's called the Bingham Cup. And it was first award in 2002, and it's been held every other year since, until this year because of COVID. It was supposed to be in Ottawa this year. But the reason there's a Bingham Cup was due to Bingham's participation on United Flight 93 during those 9/11 terrorist attacks back in 2001. Bingham was one of the four who fought back against the terrorists and took them out so that they couldn't crash the plane and their intended target. Instead, crashed into the Pennsylvania field, just killing those on board, instead of whatever their target happened to be, the White House or wherever they were going. It's not clear as to where they were supposed to be going, but he stepped up along with three others. I think he actually called his mom or texted his mom and let her know what was going on, and then he and those other three guys fought back and were very, very heroic. So as I said, this Bio 20 started as a way for gay men to play rugby together, but now it's available for any person of any sexuality to participate. I think it's still just men's, but you don't have to be gay. As I said, 2020 was to be held in Ottawa, and as of now, it's believed to be the largest 15-a-side men's tournament in the world. Really cool. If you go on YouTube and search World Rugby Mark Bingham, you'll be able to find it's like a 45-minute or 50-minute documentary they did. If you look up ESPN, if you type in ESPN Mark Bingham, you'll be able to find the 10 to 12-minute video that they created for him as well. And it's really impressive to hear his story and how his mom rallied around him and helped move his name forward and move the Bingham Cup forward. So I encourage all of you to take a few minutes out of your day and watch that. I think you'll come away with a great appreciation for what he did and what his name is continuing to do. From there, I took a look at the four major leagues in North America, and just to check and see, what's going on with sexuality in those leagues. And I know the NHL does a lot for Pride Week, and Brian Burke's a huge advocate in that aspect, and which is amazing. But currently in the NHL, as of my search, and I could be wrong, but there are no openly gay hockey players in the NHL. In the NBA, same thing. NFL, there's been a handful to 10 or so over the past 100 years, and Major League Baseball, the same thing. A few minor leaguers and a few guys that have played in majors that have come out in the past. It seems, and I could be speaking out of turn here, but it seems that in the women's game, women are more comfortable coming out than the men are. I'm not sure if that goes back to, men feeling they have to be tough and rough and tumble in order to play a sport, and women are just more open and honest with themselves and others. I'm not sure why that is, but eventually, maybe those other sports will catch up. But it seems, as almost in everything, rugby is leading the way. So as I mentioned earlier, Rugby Warfare actually created a top 10 list of inspiring gay rugby players and personalities. This was in 2018 after Israel Folau of Australia made those comments about homosexual people and people that are gay, and it wasn't well received, and he actually got banned from Rugby Australia. But the top 10 are, and I believe it starts at 10 and works its way down to 1, Ian Roberts of Australia, Keegan Hurst of the UK, Sam Stanley of the UK. All right, and our first female is Louisa Wall from New Zealand, and we have a Canadian on there, Jen Kish. Jen's a very famous Canadian rugby player. And we get a couple Americans. We have Jillian Potter and Phaedra Knight. And then our top three, the aforementioned Mark Bingham of USA, the aforementioned Gareth Thomas of Wales, and the aforementioned Nigel Owen of Wales. So some big names on there, some very recognizable names in women's and men's rugby who are openly gay or bisexual. So, saying all that, that's a lot, and it's really good information. It's great to see what rugby is doing. I think we lead the way in concussion management. I think rugby leads the way in injury management for a rough sport on both men's and women's sides. And I believe rugby leads the way probably with mental health issues. Sir John Kerwin out of New Zealand is a huge mental health advocate as well. And rugby also leads the way probably with players willing to come out as gay or bisexual or non-straight, what have you. So I think that's highly impressive. But coming up next, you're gonna want to sit back and enjoy this. Had a lovely, great, amazing conversation with Nadia Popov. Sevens fullback. She was at U Calgary with the Dinos for a season, but she had to finish because she's doing her doctor. She's becoming a doctor. So soon you're going to be calling her Dr. Popov. I'm fortunate to meet her before that, so I was lucky to call her Nadia. She also played at Queen's University. 2015, she won sevens gold at the Pan Am Olympics. And she also, when I talked to her, when I emailed her, I said, I'd love to talk to you about rugby and I'd love to talk to you about mental health. And she said, those are my two passions. Those are the two things I want to talk about. So getting to know Nadia over, a little while on a Zoom call was really impressive. Come to find out, she's a Bell Let's Talk rep, which is amazing. She currently battles depression, and she's a serious mental health advocate, and she is also an advocate for the LGBTQ. If you get a chance, look her up on Bell Let's Talk and read her story. It's pretty impressive. We'll be with Nadia shortly after this word from our sponsor, and our sponsor for the pod this week, again, is Island Lake Camps. All right. If you like to fish, if you like to canoe, if you like to kayak or swim, how about doing all that while you're staying in rustic cabins on a lake that is exclusively yours? Enjoy Island Lake Cabins for Northern New Brunswick, area code 506-356-5345, or area code 506-707-0273 to book. So just let you know, I'm heading up there this weekend. Going to spend a few days relaxing with my in-laws. It is a beautiful, beautiful place. I'm going to do a lot of swimming and probably a little fishing, and just kind of kicking back and enjoying nature and life. So stay tuned. Nadia Popov is coming up now. All right, and Canadian Ruck would like to say welcome to Nadia Popov. She's joining us today from Calgary, and Nadia's going to talk to us about her time playing rugby, university, senior level with the women's team, and also built mental health. So Nadia, welcome to the Canadian Ruck.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's start with rugby. How did you get involved with rugby?
I think like a lot of girls in my kind of age bracket, I kind of fell on it by chance. I was, starting grade 9 in high school, and I was a pretty high level hockey player at that point. And, I was missing probably every other Friday for hockey tournaments. And my math teacher, who was also the coach of the rugby team, noticed this and, kind of came up to me and was like, I'll help you out a little bit, but maybe you want to try out for my rugby team instead of all this hockey you're going to. And I talked to my best friend, who was kind of my sport partner in crime at that point, and I was like, do you want to go and try this thing out? It looks cool. And we did, and we fell in love with the sport, and the rest is kind of history, as they say.
What grade were you in? Like, how old were you when that started?
Grade 9, so I think that's around 14.
Yeah.
I'm getting way past my high school years. So
I kind of do that. I'm a history teacher. I kind of use that trick with our prep hockey and prep basketball players. Like, yeah, let's come out and play. We'll toughen you up. And so it works for some of them. Some of it doesn't. But.
Yeah.
So you finished. You were at Queen's for a while. You went to university there, and you're at Calgary now doing your med degree, which is pretty cool. Talk to us about your university rugby life. What was that like at Queen's? And I think you only played one season at Calgary. So talk to us about how that was balancing, high-level academics with playing a really competitive sport like rugby.
Yeah, I think, so I had 1 year at Queen's before I left for the sevens program. And, that first year was honestly like a really great time in my life. I kind of thrive when I have more than one thing kind of on the go. And I really liked, being able to push myself in the classroom, and then, leaving that at the classroom door and going to the rugby field and, playing around with my best friend. So I had a really phenomenal team that year, and they did a really good job of pumping my tires and helping me kind of gain that confidence in myself as a young player. And, that really helped me when I did move on to the next level with the national team. And, coming back after my time in the sevens program to the university game was a really nice way to kind of fall back in love with the sport. Playing full time is amazing and it's everyone's dream, but at a certain point it becomes a job, and that can be quite stressful. So having that opportunity to go back to university, and my goodness, like the level of university rugby I left to the level I came back to was incredible. Just how far the game had grown in that short time. So it was really nice to get to play out my last 4 years of eligibility in youth sports, and even to play out my last one here at the University of Calgary was cool to see another conference and how they kind of go about things. And yeah, in general, it's just a great a great league to develop, and you're seeing so many younger players start coming through the national team ranks out of U Sports. So in my opinion, it's a really great pathway for a lot of players, and it's a great way to set yourself up for a career after rugby as well. So 100% fully endorse. Everyone should go play U Sports, get your degree, and have some fun playing rugby while you're at it.
Yeah, it sounds like it was very beneficial for you on both sides of the ball, on the pitch and then in the classroom as well. It sounds like it taught you some drive and determination and helped you find out a little bit about what helps make you tick.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the cool things is that you remember the 2015 gold medal winning Pan Am team back in 2015. I think that was Toronto, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So that's huge. Like anytime you can represent your country at some type of major event like the Pan Am Games, there's a lot of pressure. Sometimes it's internal, sometimes it's external. This was on our home soil. Talk to us about the event itself, maybe the pressures you faced, camaraderie you developed with your teammates through that pressure-packed event.
The Pan Ams were like one of the highlights of my career. I think for any athlete, when you have the chance to compete for your country at such a big games like that, it's just a really big honor. And for me, I was born in the GTA. I grew up in Newmarket, so it was like playing at home. And so for me, that was a really cool experience. And I know a lot of the girls on the team had quite a bit of family and friends who were able to show up. So that's really special, right? It's always fun to play on the World Series and travel the world, but the reality is that a lot of those stadiums that we play in aren't very packed, and your friends and family can't be, all across the world all the time. So that was really special for a lot of us. In terms of pressure, I think that year for me in the sevens program was a bit of a roller coaster. I think that was my first year cracking through to the World Series, and I think I made every other series stop after that. So going through the sort of the highs and lows of selection, it was really nice to finish that year by playing at the Pan Am Games. And yeah, it was so much fun, and I felt kind of so free while I was playing. And yeah, overall, it was just a really great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Like you said, it's nice that you're from the GTA and your family's able to watch because, at that point, a lot of the rugby wasn't being played, televised.
Mm-hmm.
It's getting better now for both the men and women's game, but back then, your family might not have been able to see you play. So that must have been pretty special for you.
Yeah, absolutely. My 80-year-old grandma took the Via Rail from Ottawa to come. She had her, her Canadian, Molson Canadian, and watched in the stands. So
well done.
So many special, very special moments
That's awesome.
from that time.
So you would have played with some pretty great players over those years too, right? So talk to us, I guess, about what makes a great team player, and do some name dropping. Like, who are some of those players you played with that helped you along the way to help develop your skills, maybe give you some life lessons as well?
Yeah, I think I had an embarrassment of riches when it came to amazing teammates that I was able to play with while I was there. Someone who comes to mind when it comes to like a really phenomenal teammate is Mandy Marchak. I've never met someone who was so selfless and so willing to give her time and her experience to all of the younger players, and myself included. When I came in, John Tate told me, watch Mandy, that's what you need to be. Like, that's the kind of player I need you to become. And, he told her the same thing. Like, he said that, Nadia's coming through and we want her to be Mandy 2.0. So any other player, I think, would have taken that and been like, all right, well, I don't want to help her out too much. Like, I don't want her to replace me, but she did everything she could and was just such a great mentor to me. And I think that is like the epitome of what a teammate is. Just someone who really builds everyone up. It's a high pressure environment, and there's a lot of stress because the people that you see every day, they're your best friends, are also the people that you're competing with for spots. So to have that selflessness that she had was incredible, and it was a really good, she was a really good role model for me. And
It
then just
sounds
other
like
players. Yeah,
she sounds like it goes beyond teammate, but more of like a leader too, right?
absolutely.
So
Yeah, just the kindest person.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So selfless, building other people up. What else about what other characteristics do you look for as a good teammate? You're in the med school right now. What do you look for from your profs or from your colleagues that are to help make you a good team player in that environment?
Yeah. I think someone who pushes you to be the best. I think I was lucky to have a lot of people who saw a lot more in myself than I did at the time. And they knew what I was capable of, and they made sure to push me through that. And Karen Paquin was my roommate in the last couple of years out there, and she was great at that. Anytime I was feeling sorry for myself, I mean, I know you had her. I think you had her on the podcast, so you know how she is. She's a straight shooter. So
She's funny too.
yeah, so she was an incredible teammate to me. And we kind of bonded. She was an engineer, I was in science, so we kind of had this different analytical mind, even in the way that we watched video and how we analyzed the game. So she was also a really good mentor, and definitely pushed me to be the best that I could be. So yeah, same with my colleagues here. Like, I want my teachers and my profs to push me and to ask me tough questions and see what I know and what I don't know. So that's how you learn. And yeah, I think you need the people to build you up as well, but you need the people who are going to give it to you straight and really help you to be the best person and player and doctor, whatever you can be.
Absolutely. I don't think I could agree any more with that. So before the podcast, so for the listeners that are listening and the viewers that are watching, Nadia was saying that, she's self-proclaimed as retired from rugby, but she's young. She's only 26, so that might change, but she's also doing medicine right now. If you are done, or, maybe you do come back and play later, as a rugby player, what do you want to be remembered for? Like, if you're sitting around 20 and it's 2035 and you're sitting around with those 2015 Pan Am Games teammates, what do you want them to be saying about you?
I think, I looked at this question. I had to have a good kind of think about it. I think it was something that I struggled with while I was playing at that level with, obviously everyone wants to win a gold medal at the Olympics, but that's not a why, right? Like, that's an outcome, that's a goal, but everyone has their own why of, what drives them. Why do they go to training every day? Why are they putting themselves in this environment where, you work so hard for something and it can get taken away very easily? And I kind of struggled with that while I was playing, because it felt like I was just doing something for myself. It felt very selfish, and I didn't really know how to navigate that. And it wasn't until I kind of took that step away from the sevens program that I really sort of found my why. And that was, all the things that playing at that level had given me in terms of my own personal growth, the people that I met, but also the platform to be able to give back. And since then I've gotten involved with organizations like You Can Play, which promotes LGBT respect and inclusion in sport. And getting involved with that with so many other Olympians and high performing athletes was just a really good way to kind of find meaning in what I was doing. And same with the mental health kind of advocacy that I accidentally fell into has also kind of, it's made it seem worth it, the struggles that I did go through. So I think if I were to look at what I want to be remembered for, obviously I want to be remembered for being a good player and a strong player and a hard hitter, but at the end of the day, I hope it's the things that I've done off the field that people really remember about my rugby career.
I think that's fair, because you've got a wide range of, I guess, topics that your teammates could talk to you about, and we're going to get to that other aspect here shortly. But on the pitch, yeah, you want to be remembered for that gritty, persevering, never say die type of player. But off the pitch, I think you've done a lot more as well. So before we get to that, we're going to have a little fun. We're going to do our quick fire section.
All right.
So I've got about 20 questions here. You don't have to put a lot of thought into it, but you can. It's entirely up to you. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
Question one, best team you've ever faced?
Ooh, that's a good one. For me personally, I think I played England a couple times. That was when they were pretty strong. I know they've kind of gone up and down, but they're always such a hard, gritty team, and they've just got, I think they're playing rugby while they're in the womb, so they've got that advantage.
Come out with a ball.
Yeah.
All right, best player you ever faced?
I'd have to say someone like Aleve Kelter on the USA. Like that girl is probably the strongest person in my opinion in the world. So you see those legs going, and you're just hoping you can maybe grab like a big toe to get her down.
All right, so that might be the answer for your next question. So the next question is toughest player you ever faced, and tell my guests somebody that's running at you 1v1 and they have the ball, and you're like, oh god, just trip or something because I don't know if I want to stick my head in there.
Yeah, no, I have to put her down for that too. Like that's to me when I think best player, it's like who do I not want to be matched up in front of? So yeah, I'd say her.
All right, sevens or 15s?
That's a tough one. I think as much as I played more sevens, I think my kind of style of play and the sort of analytics and strategy that I like about 15s, that's probably where I was better suited. But I love them both. And I think that's a cop-out answer, but everyone says it. They're just so different.
It's Canadian of you, right?
Yes.
Best match you were ever a part of?
Ooh. Okay, so this is kind of funny. It's not actually an international match. It was my first year of university at Queen's. We made it to the final, which Queen's had not done in a very long time, the OUA final. And we played this game against Guelph Griffins. And, obviously they were a powerhouse. They're still a powerhouse, but that was like the Brittany Ben era. And I just remember like I was a rookie and I'm lined up against her and kind of scared out of my mind. But yeah, that game, we lost it, I think, like 8-7 or something. Like it was such a low scoring game, but just the grittiest. Like I don't think there was a single missed tackle in the entire game. But that's something that I look back on and I go, wow, like that was, even though we lost, that was a really cool game to be a part of.
That's cool. It's a good memory for sure. What's your favorite rugby tradition?
There's so many, but I think the difference between rugby and a lot of sports is the respect that you have to have. It's kind of inherent. If you're going to be throwing your body without any padding at other people, you have to be able to respect the game and respect your opponent. So I love going up to the clubhouse with the other team afterwards and buying your opposite a pint. I was maybe 16 when I started doing that, and they'd pass me one. I'd be like, "Can I get a 7-Up, please?" But just really cool to see that from an early age and to see how important that respect is. Because at the end of the day, we all love the game and we all want to come out safe and in good spirits.
We know you weren't drinking 7-Up. All right, best team you played with?
Ooh, best team I played with. Honestly, like I think that like the 2015 Pan Am Games, like that team that I was a part of was a really incredible team, and the majority of that team went on to play in Rio the following year. So even just playing with that group of girls for so long was really cool, and it was special to see them win that bronze medal in the end.
It's unfortunate you were injured leading up to the Olympics, right? So that would have been sour for you, but very, as you said, you were very happy to see them kind of move on there.
Oh yeah, like it's definitely bittersweet, and definitely something that took a while to kind of get over. At the time, my partner just kind of picked me up and we went and did a road trip down the Oregon coast while they were playing. So it was nice to get away and be away from social media during that time. But looking back on it now, I'm so proud of what they were able to accomplish and the amount of people in Canada that they were able to inspire with what they did.
Your nickname.
My nickname is Grandma Gonads, and the Gonads for short. So my name is Nadia, and a lot of people shorten that to Nads. And then I'll be running down, and every team I go on, the coach doesn't really realize it until I'm running down the field and they start yelling, "Go Nads! Go Nads!" And people just kind of look at them. So yeah,
Where
I
did
kind of came
grandma
up from
come
that.
from?
That was just me, like mostly coming back to U Sports at a bit of an older age. So I'm there trying to learn. Even now, like the kids were doing TikTok dances before our games, and I'm like, I need to go sleep. It's 8:00. Like,
So
so yeah.
on TikTok?
No, I feel like I get to see like the highlights because it always comes up on Instagram anyways.
Yeah.
So better to not add another social media to my phone.
All right. So the next one, best nickname. It might be yours, but best nickname you've heard. I've heard things from like Pancake Face to a bunch of different ones. So I don't know.
That's a tough one. I think mine's pretty up there. I played the last couple seasons out at Queens with Sophie DeGoody. And from the get-go, she was just DeBatty. So I thought that one was pretty fun.
All right. Any game day superstitions?
When it comes to like 15s games, I think getting ready for that's a bit different than sevens. But in terms of my university 15s games, I had kind of a little tradition of, we'd go out to the field and have our sort of activation and then head back to the change rooms. And at Queens, our change rooms were in the athletic complex. So I'd walk back and then I'd get in line at Tim's and grab my little small coffee, always from the same Tim Hortons employee. And, she'd wish me luck for my game. And, just a small little thing that always kind of brightened my day. And, as the girls were blasting their music and doing their dance parties, I'd be sitting there sipping my coffee. So
that one's kind of beyond your control. What if it's somebody else working at the Tim's?
I know. I mean, I frequented it often, so I knew most of them pretty well at that point. But even if it was someone else serving me, like, she'd always be in the background and be like, "My rugby star!" Like, so just like a fun thing that I look back on with fond memories.
All right. Tell me 3 people you would take on a road trip with you, a weekend road trip.
Ooh.
It can be anybody.
Anybody.
Yep. Outside the rugby realm.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know if this is just because of the current political climate, but I'd love to take like Obama on a road trip.
Thank you. I thought you were going to say Trump there for a second, and I was like,
oh wow. No, I would just like to put this on the record. I do not support Donald Trump whatsoever. Yeah, no. I think Obama, and if I could like have them both, Michelle Obama as well. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Wow, I'm really going American here.
You are. That's fine.
Yeah, I love the, like the strong, kind of like powerful women. And then these are all political people at this point, but that's just where we're at. Our Minister of Health in Alberta is a superstar. Not our minister, sorry. We don't actually like him. Our Chief Medical Officer. He's in a fight with the doctors. It's a stressful time. Okay. Our Chief Medical Officer, so the person who has been leading all of our COVID press conferences, she's been like absolutely incredible. So, kind of the same way that I looked up to Mandy and Kish and Ghislaine, I'm looking at her and I'm like, wow, like she is a boss lady in medicine.
She's got it together.
Yeah. So I feel like that would be an interesting car ride, but I'd enjoy it.
That'd be fun. It must be the Russian in you bringing all the Americans along and trying to get some secrets or something, right? All stuff going on.
Oh,
All right. Chips or cookies?
Cookies, absolutely. Cookies.
What kind?
I'm like a classic, like chocolate chip, shortbread. Yeah, anything like chocolatey and fatty. It's great for me. There's fruit in there. I don't want it.
No, fruit does not belong in any.
No.
Homemade, I'm assuming, over like, Mr. Christie or something, or what?
I mean, I don't discriminate. If someone else bakes the cookies, then obviously I'll take those. But if it's between my baking and Mr. Christie's, then I'd probably go Mr. Christie's.
Yeah, I'm the same way. French fries or onion rings?
I think I generally go with French fries most of the time, but toss an onion ring in there every now and then.
French fries or poutine?
French fries, I don't really like gravy, which is
Oh
probably a
no.
good thing. If I
Yeah.
liked poutine, I think that would be game over for me.
You'd
So
be, yeah, you'd be drinking it with a straw.
yeah,
All right, favorite beer?
I'm not a huge
7
beer
Up?
person. I love cider. Yeah, 7 Up. I'm a big cider person. So we've
Okay.
got a lot of like craft breweries, craft cideries around here. But there's this one cider from Oregon that I absolutely loved. It was Atlas. I think they changed the name to Avid or something like that. But yeah, this like peach apricot cider. Um, Incredible. But yeah, big cider fan. I'll drink a good sour beer. I like sour beer, but yeah.
Okay. Guilty pleasure.
Guilty pleasure. I watch a lot of really trash reality dating shows. So my particular favorite of quarantine has been 90 Day Fiance on TLC. Don't know if you've heard of it.
No.
Highly recommend. It's so in the States you can get a K1 visa, which is like a fiance visa. So it's, you know, Americans trying to bring over people from Russia or the Philippines, and you know, you get to come to the US for 90 days, and then at the end of the 90 days, you either have to get married or you go back to your country. So it's quite entertaining. There's a lot of characters on it. And yeah,
I
I
have
highly
uh,
recommend.
I have a hard time watching reality TV. I just with what's going on in the U.S. politics right now, I think that's enough. All
Hmm.
right, best place for a post-match beer or post-match cider.
Ooh. Okay, well, I'm just gonna have to go back to Markham Fletcher's Fields. Like, just going up to the clubhouse is my favorite place to grab a pint after a game. So I'm gonna put that out there. And I know a lot of people from Ontario who grew up playing at Fletcher's would probably say the same thing. There's something special about it.
I think that's good. I think you just answered this. I was going to ask, what series are you binge watching right now? Is it the 90 Day Fiance or?
Yeah, I mean, they just finished up a season, so I got to find something new to watch. But yeah, that was a big one. And then I just watched Lennox Hill on Netflix, which is another reality show, but it's like a medical. It follows a
Okay.
medical team in the U.S. So when I was, you know, studying for my neurology midterm, I kind of gave up and started putting that on, and they're talking about brain surgery and stuff. So I kind of felt like I was studying.
Fair enough. What's your favorite movie?
Ooh, favorite movie. I really liked Hidden Figures. Again,
Oh,
a bit of a theme. Like, I love those women who are just breaking barriers before it was cool. Like, I think they inspire me a lot, and obviously I've benefited from the work that they put in to kind of break down those barriers. So yeah, Hidden
nice.
Figures I thought was an incredible movie.
Nice. Who would play you in the Netflix movie of your life?
Okay, so I got this the other day that they think I look like the girl from How I Met Your Mother. She's got the brown hair.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, I can't remember her name, but yeah, apparently she looks a little bit like me, and I think her character is pretty spunky. So I like
yeah.
that. She
I
can
can
she
see
can play
that.
me.
I can see
Yeah.
that. All right, who would play the leading opposite?
Oh, that's tough. That's like, hmm.
Excuse me. I know you're in a relationship,
I'm
but
not right now.
oh, okay.
I'm
So then
single.
it's
Yes.
fair
Yeah.
game because
It's fair
some
game. I could go. I'm like going through like my list of
you could have two
celebrities.
opposites.
Maybe that would be great. You know,
Yeah.
a little throuple action. Um, I love Emma Watson. She's like been my like top celebrity crush for so long. And this is like really gonna age me, and I'm a little embarrassed to say it, but Channing Tatum was like one of those guys when I was growing up watching, and I was like, that isn't a good looking man. So
Channing Tatum now or Channing Tatum like 10 years ago?
probably 10 years ago, like step up Channing Tatum or like Magic Mike Channing Tatum.
The dancing Channing.
Yeah. Yeah. If they could both be there, like absolutely, that'd be great.
All right. Who had the biggest impact on you as a player?
Ooh, as a player, it would be my high school kind of coach, mentor. You know, we ended up playing together, but her name's Mackenzie Higgs, and she's 4 years older than me. So my first year playing rugby at all in high school was her first year of university, and she, you know, graduated and came back to help us out in coaching. And yeah, she like obviously coached me those 4 years, and then we played against each other in the university league, and since then we've been best friends. But I'll stick with this. So yeah, she's been a constant in my career. If I'm losing you here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my end. It says mine's unstable. It's you still there?
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Yeah,
I can see you again. Where did I cut off there?
I'd say I think we should just restart with that question because I got the name and then started playing against, and then you started to freeze, but it said my internet was all messed up. So we'll just restart with the question, okay? Right.
Yeah.
So who had the biggest impact on you as a player?
So I definitely have to say Mackenzie Higgs. She was one of my high school coaches, and yeah, she graduated from my high school the year before I came, and then, you know, kind of came back during her university career to help coach us. And she was one of the first people to really tell me, you know, like you got this, kid, you're gonna go far, and really was probably my number one cheerleader behind my very proud Russian father throughout my career. So, you know, I had the chance to be coached by her and then to play with her for the Aurora Barbarians, our club, and then to play against her in youth sports. So it was kind of a fun career together, and now she's still one of my closest friends.
That's awesome. It's nice that you'll be able to continue that even after the high school, and that's really cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to switch focus now. Reading up on you, it's very evident that you're a mental health advocate. You've been featured on Bell Let's Talk. So I guess I got a few questions, I guess, kind of designed around that. So one, can you walk us through your battle with depression, both as an elite level athlete and, you know, a student that went through a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and now you're working through med school. Talk to us about, I guess, figuring that out, the struggles, perseverance, and things like that.
Yeah, so I really didn't know much about mental health. You know, I think a lot of things have changed now with just the awareness that's out there, as well as some more education going into schools. But for me, I never really knew what it meant to be mentally well or mentally not so well. And I think my struggle kind of started when I was, you know, transitioning out to the national program. It was a lot at 19 to, you know, pick up and leave the university team that I'd gotten so close with. And, you know, that was also the same time that I was kind of coming to terms with my sexuality. So I think I had a lot of questions about who I was and what I was doing and what was important to me. And then just being in a really high pressure environment kind of was the perfect storm. So, you know, it really kind of hit home, and I knew I needed to do something about it around the time of the Pan Am Games. I wasn't feeling super hot leading into it. But then I had this incredible experience and I felt so happy and fulfilled. And I thought that, you know, that was it. I made this huge goal and that was going to make me happy. And kind of realizing that happiness was very momentary. And as soon as I got back I went back to thinking, I'm a terrible player, I'm a terrible person. It was just a fluke that I was there, and this really negative self-talk that, I could recognize that it wasn't healthy. And I was very fortunate at the time to have a partner who was very knowledgeable about mental health and really helped me to take that step of reaching out to our sports psychologist and asking for help. And from there, I got referred to a therapist. And even that was difficult because, we were only given, I think, 4 sessions. Like, I was told I had 4 sessions, and that's all that they could fund. And, that's September. Like, I had a year leading up to the Olympics. So I think things are a bit different now, but it was just not something that they knew how to deal with. They had the medical infrastructure. If you break your leg, they had all the protocols, but mental health was just something new. And so I didn't, my coaches didn't know. I didn't really tell anyone. The only person that I really told, other than Karen, my roommate, because obviously she knew I was going to therapy and stuff like that, was my strength and conditioning coach, Dana. And I had a really good relationship with him. And he was someone who always made me feel like I was a person first and an athlete second. Whereas, the way I felt from a lot of my coaches and the other teammates was that I was only important if I was putting the numbers up and, I was performing well. And that's not to say that that's how they treated me, but that's just the perception that I had given the kind of state that I was in. So yeah, Dana was really, really big in helping me kind of get through that year. And just having him in the daily environment, he knew if I was not having a good day, and he knew when he needed to make me laugh and when I just needed to be left alone to power through a workout and go home.
That's nice. Yeah, it's come a long way, the mental health aspect of a lot of things. Even like, I'm 43, like when I was in high school and playing club rugby, that stuff just wasn't talked about. And even 5 years ago, it was still kind of on the precipice of kind of becoming mainstream as to what can be help. And it's slowly getting there. So you kind of hit it at a time where it was slowly making a headway, but still at a very difficult time to do that. And not an easy thing to talk about, for sure. It sounds like rugby triggered some of your symptoms in a sense that you left what you knew to try and become a better rugby player. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it was, the first time in my life that rugby became the only thing that I was working towards, right? So I loved school. I'd always been really, like, performing well in school brought me a lot of joy and a lot of my self-worth. And I think for a lot of young adults, like, you get your self-worth from accomplishments and things that you're able to do, which isn't healthy, but that's just kind of how we're brought up. And so for me, losing, the ability to go to school, suddenly rugby was everything. And so if I wasn't doing well or was having a bad training week in rugby, I didn't have anything else to kind of fall back on and to say, okay, like, rugby's not going so well, but like, I just aced that exam in school, so I still feel okay.
Balance out.
Exactly. Yeah. So in a lot of ways, just that environment was kind of, like I said, a perfect storm. In the medical community, we kind of see depression, mental health is a combination of your genetics, your environment, and then just like personal coping skills. So, that was a time that I didn't have a lot of coping skills, and I didn't, my mental health toolbox was pretty empty. So that kind of combination of things definitely opened me up to experiencing that. But I mean, at the same time, in other times in my life, rugby was something that was really positive for my mental health. So a lot of that was just how I looked at it and the environment that I was kind of in.
I think that's fair. I think, yeah, it seems apparent that it caused some issues, but I think it also helped you at times, like your strength and conditioning coach, having Karen as your roommate, maybe being able to get on the field and, bash some heads once in a while, right? So
yeah, I miss that now, you know. I'm cooped
You
into
can,
my room on Zoom med school, and I get frustrated. I can't just go hit people
do you have
legally.
roommates?
So no, not right now. I
Oh,
have a
okay.
roommate coming in soon, but I've been on my own for the last 4 months.
I
So
see you still have Christmas lights up too.
yeah, they're kind of nice in the, when it
Yep.
gets dark,
Yep.
but they're just
I
like
miss
white lights.
I miss that university lifestyle. We can just leave
Oh yeah.
stuff. Yeah, I miss that. All right. Why was it important to you to bring your mental health out into the open? How difficult of it was that first step to bring that to light for people?
I think there's a lot of things that kind of had to fall into place for that whole thing to happen. It was, I think, December of the Olympic year. We had this kind of Olympic excellence series, and they brought a bunch of the Olympic hopefuls and Olympians together at a conference in Toronto. And Claire Hughes was our keynote speaker.
She's great.
And the next day we had this kind of media day, and a CBC reporter was interviewing me for camera, and asked me what Olympian inspires me the most. And I kind of accidentally told them that I love Claire Hughes, and this is why. And it's because I also struggle with mental health. And I was kind of terrified that I said that. Again, knowing that this footage would probably never see the light of day. But they did ask me, we're considering doing a series on this in the future. Like, would you be willing to write about it? And at the time I was kind of like, I'm not sure, but like, maybe I'll just give you my email. And, it was pretty lucky on my side that by the time they reached out to me to do that, it was almost a year later, and I was back at school. I was out of the national team environment and had a bit of space to kind of process not making the Olympics and process what I went through in terms of my mental health. And it kind of felt like the right time to share what I went through, because I knew I wasn't the only one. And, I'd known players who'd experienced similar things, and it was just everything was kind of hidden, and there was a lot of shame attached to it. And I think shame is something that, is never healthy. And so being able to kind of share it without the pressure of being on the national team and still kind of competing for that selection was the right timing for me. And I guess it resonated with a lot of people. So that definitely made me feel good about writing it.
Absolutely, I imagine it would. Um, so you spoke a little bit about the Olympics there, and I know you were injured leading up to it. Stress fractures, I think, is what. Um,
Yeah.
but the toll that would have had on your mental health as well would have been, I imagine, tremendous, because that would have been something that you would have been looking forward to keying up on after, a successful Pan Am Games. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk to us about that? Like, what did you do? What were some coping strategies or mechanisms you had in place during that time while you were playing during the Olympics? Like you said, it was bittersweet. Now in med school, what are some coping mechanisms or coping strategies, techniques, if you will, that you use with your depression while you're preparing to become Dr. Popov?
Yeah, I think I learned a lot of these things in rugby, and it wasn't the smoothest way of picking these up, but it's a little bit cliche, but definitely like looking at what's in your control and what's not. So a big thing for me is, especially things like a pandemic that's like super out of control. I'm now on Zoom med school, and this isn't what I was expecting for my medical education. We just got some pretty bad news about our clerkship. So that's the part of med school where we rotate through different specialties. And it's also the part where you get to go on 2-week electives at other schools across the country and kind of test out their programs and see where you might want to go to for residency. And we just found out that because of the pandemic, we're not going to be able to do that in January like we're supposed to. So, there's a lot of things outside of my control right now. And, things like selection in a lot of ways were outside of my control. All I could do was show up and put my best effort on the field. And if that was good enough, great. But I kind of had to learn that, I had to be proud of what I did, even if I didn't make selection based on that performance. Like, as long as I knew that I gave it my all, that's what I had to focus on. And then now there's a kind of a new wave of therapeutic techniques called acceptance and commitment therapy. And so it was actually my team doctor out west who recommended this book called The Confidence Gap to me by Russ Harris. And it has a lot of like mindfulness based techniques to dealing with thoughts. And it's a much less combative way of looking at mental health than I find a lot of other therapeutic modalities. So, things like positive affirmations and, just keep telling yourself you're going to make it and you're going to make it, like that never really worked for me. So finding something that was kind of like, it's okay to have these thoughts. Thoughts in themselves aren't good nor bad. It's just how you react to them. And, if you have a thought that comes through your mind that says, I'm a terrible rugby player, I think a lot of our initial reaction is like, oh my gosh, I am. Like, can you really attach yourself to that thought? But if you can learn to sort of diffuse from that thought and say, okay, like that's, that was a thought that entered my head and now it's gone and a new one's going to come. That's how the human brain works.
Don't get hung up on it, right? Don't let it fester.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's great advice. You spoke a little bit too about some of your support system when you were first talking about this. You had, your roommate Karen Pekwea, you had your SNC guy Dana. Who's been a support pillar for you, I guess, during your journey with mental health from the time you kind of started addressing it to even now?
I think I've had a lot of people who've really supported me in it. When I was first going through this, I mentioned my partner at the time. We're no longer together, but she's still a person who's in my life. And she was really critical at that time where I wasn't really able to help myself. And then people like my brother's gone through some similar things with his mental health, and sort of going through that together has been helpful for us. And just my friends in general. I think because this is out in the open, it's on the internet, like it's there, it's much easier for me to share that kind of stuff with new friends that I make. And my med school friends out here, my like core group, they know that I've gone through that, and they're really good at, if I'm not feeling so great, like they pick up on it, and they'll invite me over for dinner. They'll, they take care of me really well. And they weren't even there through my worst parts of it, but they're definitely very key to keeping me in a good place during the hecticness of med school.
It's great. It's great that you're open about it, and it's great that you take people up on those invites. They can see you're down, like come over for supper, and some people might be more inclined to shut themselves off. It's probably really good for you that you actually get in that environment where you're hanging out with people that care for you.
Exactly.
So, as I mentioned earlier, you've been featured on Bell Let's Talk, which is really cool. At my school, we do the Bell Let's Talk Day. There's about 300 students at our school, and at lunch we've got activities, and everybody's on their phones tweeting and Instagramming like crazy with the hashtags to raise money. Are you involved in any other initiatives, or is Bell Let's Talk like that's the initiative?
Yeah, Bell Let's Talk is a huge one, and certain things through the CBC. So I've written 2 articles at this point through their Players' Own Voice kind of column. And then I spoke at one of their Blue Monday events. So a lot of it kind of melds into the work that I do with You Can Play as well. So talking to schools, talking to sports teams about just diversity, inclusion, respect, all that kind of stuff. It definitely comes into play because, like I said, coming to terms with my sexuality as a 19-year-old, growing up in a very Catholic, homophobic school system, definitely played into it, right? So you know, if you're stressed in the environment that you're in and you don't have a good sense of who you are and where you fit in, that's just kind of a recipe for disaster. So yeah, definitely, as much as I can, the mental health advocacy work and then the LGBT work as well. And those kind of things fill my cup. Like that helps me keep my mental health where it needs to be, because I feel like I'm doing something important, and I'm helping people who might not have the courage yet to kind of speak up about what they're going through.
100%. So basically, if you're interested in helping any way you can, is provided you have the time to do it with, pursuing
Yes.
a degree, right? That's
Yeah.
great. With that, with the mental health aspect and the LGBTQ information, is there anything else you feel that you should share with us? Did we miss anything?
I think we got everything out there. I think for anyone who's maybe struggling or, you know, trying to find their own way, I'd definitely just say, like, find the things that fill your cup and that, you know, make you feel good about yourself and bring you that fulfillment, and kind of focus on that. So when the other stuff that you have to do, like go to school, go to work, you know, those things that maybe aren't your favorite thing in the world, if you can have those other things that do bring you joy, I think that really can balance out the normal human stuff you gotta go through to live in today's kind of world.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so thank you for that. That's a lot of great information. I'm sure the viewers will really appreciate you hearing your story, and maybe it'll spark somebody else to kind of come out with mental health issues or sexuality issues. I think that's part of why we talk about this stuff, right? Before we sign off, I ask this all my guests: any great rugby stories you can share with us, and feel free to throw somebody under the bus. It's entirely up to you. Bear in mind that they might come on later and get you back.
This is true. This is a fun one. It was actually my first World Series event that I got selected for in, I want to say 2015. We were going down to Sao Paulo, Brazil, and you know, I'm obviously like super excited. Like, I've made that first milestone. But as we were leaving, I think we had our flight path was supposed to be Victoria, Vancouver, Vancouver to Chicago, and Chicago to Sao Paulo. But as we left, we got on our plane, got to Vancouver, and just as we got to Vancouver, there was a huge snowstorm in Chicago, and the entire airport shut down. And I guess it was just a really bad weather system, because it seemed like every airport was shutting down. So, you know, in the Vancouver airport, you go through US security first. You do your customs on that side, and then you get on the plane, and, you know, once you're in the US, you're technically already past their customs. So we're sitting on this plane for 3 hours, and then we got to go back off. We got to go back through to Canadian customs, and then we're all sitting there like, how are we going to get to our tournament? So, you know, we're in the hotel. We didn't have much to do. And I can't remember if it was Kish or just Len, probably Kish, started tweeting out Canadian celebrities asking for their private jet, and kind of throwing out these SOS tweets of, you know, Justin Bieber SOS, you know, Canadian women's team needs to get to Olympic qualifier, and, you know, just everyone we could think of, Trudeau, like, and we all started retweeting. We're like going crazy, and we got a response back from Arlene Dickinson, the Dragon's Den lady. And she was like, you know, I don't have my own private jet, but like, let's see. And she started working with like our management to, you know, get a plane for us. And it was this whole thing. And eventually they were able to find us a very convoluted, normal, like commercial flight trip to get down there. But that took us like 3 whole days of flying, and we got there a day and a half before the tournament started. So a little unconventional, but it was a really fun story to look back. And I think the Canadian media even picked up on it and did a story about our tweets for help. So
that's hilarious. Well, it shows what the rugby spirit's like. We're down. Let's all pull together and and try and
Mm-hmm.
figure out a way out of this, right? So that's awesome. Uh,
Yeah.
well, listen, Nadia, it's been great. It's been a pleasure chatting with you about rugby, mental health, everything else. We covered a lot of topics here, so thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming on the Canadian Ruck, and best of luck becoming Dr. Popov.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. What a great conversation. That was awesome. Thanks very much, Nadia. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule doing becoming a doctor. That's really impressive stuff, and we wish you nothing but the best of success as you finish pursuing that dream. Love to see you back on the pitch sometime. I know it might be difficult with what you're going through right now with your school and education, but would love. I think a lot of your listeners, if not all of us, would love to see you pick that ball back up and give it another crack with Team Canada. Um, and again, I say it to all my guests, and it's true. I'd love to have you or anybody else on again. Coming up next, we got some nice names. We've got Mark Wyatt. He'll be on. He'll be our next pod. Right after that will be Brett Bukaboom. I had a good conversation with Brett last night. Very funny guy, good crop of a lad. Very enjoyable conversation. Then shortly after that, we'll have Hubert Bidens, followed by Rod Snow, Matt Heaton, who just won Player of the Year for Men's 15s, and Pat Parfrey, who is a Canadian Shield winner, which is the Players Player. So that's the list we have coming up. As I look at that, I realize there's 6 guys there. Definitely want to get more female content. So any of my listeners, if you have any thoughts as to who you'd like to hear from on the female side, please reach out and let me know, and I will do my best to track them down and set up a Zoom call and get them on. But let me know who you want to hear from on the female side, on the men's side, on the management side, whatever. I've got a feeler out to Nigel Owens, trying to get him on. That would be really cool. Listening to his story from his perspective on rugby at the international level. Plus, he's hilarious. He would be a great guest. As always, huge thank you to the essential workers, sports staff, volunteers, everybody who's been working during the pandemic. It's still going on. I know it's dying down in some areas, but I see New Zealand somehow, a family of 4, I believe, were impacted. I'm not sure how that happens when they've locked everything down. It's been over 102 days. Here in New Brunswick, I think we have 6 active cases. When you consider that's pretty low to a lot of other places in the country, it's still a big number that have COVID, and things can turn around if we're not careful. So make sure you're taking those precautions as best as you can, everybody. As always, we need to say thanks to Ben Sound Music for supplying our intro and closing tunes. And as I said just previously, feel free to request topics for future podcasts. You know what my lineup is coming. You know who those guests are. I haven't spoken with Hubert, Rod, Matt, or Pat yet. So if you have anything you want to ask them, send me a message, and I will. I'll try and add that into my question conversation with those lads. I've already spoken with Mark and Brett, so that those ones you can't. But if you want to ask Hubert anything, or Rod anything, or Matt or Pat anything, please send me an email, a tweet, what have you, and throw those questions up. But that's the end of our pod for today. Thanks for listening. It's been a pleasure as always. So until next time, this is Jamie. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay sane, and most importantly, keep on rucking.